Right. So we are busy now with step 7. Chris was doing step 6. And now we're thinking about the material and the methods that we be using. So I think up till now, you've decided on your topic, why you are going to do this particular research. You've looked at certain problems. You've looked at certain research questions. You have looked at your hypothesis. You've looked at a variety of different steps. I think all in all, we've got about 9 steps to follow, and we are now then busy with the materials and the methods, which is step number 7. So with this presentation now, it gives you some sort of guidance questions to help you to determine how you're going to continue with your project. So number 7 is very much about asking specific questions, and you keep on asking the questions. If you get to an answer and you're not satisfied, you keep on asking the questions, but we focus on the different questions such as the what, the where, and the how you will do your research. So we're going to focus on those 3 for the moment. So firstly, you must also determine whether your research will be a qualitative or quantitative study, or maybe it's going to be a little bit of both. So when we compare the 2 different types, the quantitative versus the qualitative, we're looking at the following. So qualitative means the following: it concerns with observing or interesting behavior, or what is said or what has been said so far. It involves interpreting what the participants say or do. It also involves observation, interviews, survey questions, and we will get to that because we also look at the different sample sizes. Sometimes it depends on the project itself. It might be small, only 1 or 2 persons, 5 to 10 persons, or sometimes it might even be a little bit bigger, larger groups. The study guide also talk about surveys of 100, 150 at least. So, but it all depends on the type of project that you are busy doing. So the quantitative also looks at the data analysis. We look for specific themes. We look at specific patterns in the data collection. So the results that we captured as descriptions, sometimes it can be quotes, it can be descriptive examples. So we need to have a look at that as well. And then usually the social science category, anthropology, educational studies, the human behavior, human settlements, psychology, that's what's covered with the quantitative research that we are doing. So when we get to the qualitative, it means something else. It involves measuring, collecting of data, certain facts. Usually it's numbers, graphs, or things like that. And typically it involves experiments, the testing, a theory or a design, and building on that. So it also involves a variety of certain variables, because often the study cause and effects that we have to look at. So experiments repeated at least 3 times. So don't be satisfied once you do only an experiment and you think it works. You have to repeat it at least 3 times to make sure every time the result is exactly the same. When it comes to the prototypes that you are building, don't just be satisfied with one. Build another one. See if you can prove on that. but you must have at least 2 prototypes. The data analysis, statistical analysis, or computer compare the certain numerical data, for instance. The results usually is in the form of a table, a graph, or a diagram. So when we talk about the quantitative research, all Expo categories can be involved in these quantitative studies. So we're still busy with the material and the method, and most of the answers to the questions below will also depend on whether your research will be then quantitative, qualitative, a little bit of both, or just a mixture of the different methods. So remember, we said it's all about asking the questions. So now we ask the what questions. For instance, what method or methods will you use? Will you use existing methods or modify some of the existing methods that you've already looked at or you came across? What materials will you need? What data will you collect? What will your sample size be? Will it be a smaller one? Will it be a bigger one? How much data must you collect? The costs are involved in doing the research is very important because you need to plan for these things. You need to make sure that you will get hold of certain materials. Maybe you need certain skills. If you can't do it on your own, you need somebody else, and you need to recognize and give recognition to the people that assisted you in this project. So assistance, if you need that for transport, getting the material, using certain software to draw your plans or analyze your data, operating machinery, coding, all those sort of things. Remember what I said, if you need assistance, you also need to give recognition to the people that assist you. So the next one is then obviously the where questions. Where will you conduct the research? I think Chris has already just touched on some of these things, and you need to get permission to do certain research at certain places, universities, and those sort of things. So any arrangement that need to be made regarding the research site, for instance, any persons have to be contacted. Does the research need to be done in a regulated research institute or a school lab, for instance? These are all the type of questions that you need to go through. Will the data be collected at the school itself? Will it be collected via emails or telephone calls, WhatsApp groups? Will you personally observe certain things? Will you take part of interviews? So permission need to be conducted for these research as well. So if your answer is yes, then from whom and who will you get the permission? That's very important as well. So then we come to the how questions. Also very important. How will you collect the data? Will it be involve experiments or designing or building some prototypes or observing people or interviews or just sending out certain questionnaires? Then again, the sample size, remember, depending on your project itself. So how much data will you collect? And how will you select your sample? And why will you select it in this particular way? Very important to ask that. So many times you will repeat the experiments. So is it going to be only once that you're going to repeat it, twice or 3 times? Very important that at the end of the day, each experiment that you repeat, you have to get the same results. So how many interviews or questionnaires will you need? How will you design or plan or build your prototype? How many prototypes, and how will you test your prototypes? This is the type of question that you need to be asking all the time. How will you record the data? Will it be by video? Will you have a prototype there for an example? Will you analyze the data? How are you going to do that? Do you need certain software for that? How will you get the consent if your research involves minors? So this is also very important. You need to get the consent from the parents. And how will you ensure confidentiality of the data? Remember, Chris already touched on that. And then lastly, how long will the research take as well? So if we look at the materials and the methods, there's a little bit of further guidance that we can recommend. We read about the methods used in other studies. What were the advantages or the limitations? Will their methods be suitable for your study? Why and can you adapt certain methods from them? Some of the projects that you've seen internationally, can it be used in your local content or context? It's very important to have a wide range of questions that you ask yourself. And can you use alternatives? For instance, the eco-friendly environment, recycled material, always help if you can do that. And how can you reduce the cost of the research? Costs sometimes are quite expensive, so you need to look at those as well. And then, can you conduct other tests and strengthen your data? And how will you ensure that accurate data are collected? And if replicated, will others get the same results? Very important. List the materials with units, if applicable. And will the sample or test be sufficient for you to make certain conclusions from that? And then obviously, Chris has touched on the ethics and the safety of the material and the methods. That's always to make a conclusive project. At the end of the day, I've looked at this golf cart, and sometimes people ask, why can't recharge these while you are playing golf? And I'm also a keen golfer, and sometimes you come to a point where you see the batteries are now getting flat. So I've been asking the question to some of my friends and said, listen, man, let's try and redesign something. Let's put a solar panel on the roof. And the guys told me, man, if you want to have a solar panel for this type of vehicle, this golf cart, you need at least a solar panel about 10 times the roof of this golf cart. So it's just not practical. And I said, man, then we must do something else. We use the same roof, we just use a different type of engine, for instance. Maybe we must look at the redesigning how we propel this type of vehicle. And you know what? Some other people have also thought about these things. And just look at some of the inventions I've come across with this golf cart. And maybe you can have a look at this as well. So yeah, just to summarize again, we remember we ask certain questions. You keep on asking these questions, and sometimes you get to a part where you think this is your solution. But by keeping on asking these questions, you get to a better place where you can finalize your project at the end of the day. So this is my presentation. And I'm going to hand over to Segwadi again. Thank you.